morning, and thanks again for joining me here on Sin's Workshop. Today we're going to be talking about Bone Crier's Moon by Kathryn Purdie, published by Kathryn Purdie Books, March 3rd of this year. The book is for young adult readers, age 13 and over, but I'm a 28-year-old woman who's reading this book, so I don't really listen to the age range. I always put and over because, I think if there's a mature plot line, you don't have to be just a young adult to appreciate these books. And I certainly did appreciate this book because it's the first in a new young adult fantasy series, and it was all in all a very interesting novel. It had a very strong opening that follows Bastien. He is one of the main point of views in the story. And he watches his parent get murdered on the bridge. This is something that happens in folklore, mythology of this world that we're reading about. So the fact that he witnesses this, it sort of breaks him, and he becomes an orphan. And then he sort of embarks on this journey of revenge. But we don't really get to see that, because it jumps forward. He goes from being a little kid to being about, I would say, 17, 18-year-old young man. He's teamed up with two other characters. They're kind of minor characters, but they do become pretty strong characters later on in the novel, in their own right. But they are also orphans. They did suffer the same fate that he did. Their parent was murdered on a bridge at night. It's always a bridge, it's always at night. I believe it's always on the full moon as well. So together they live as orphans, and they struggle and they train themselves so that they can kill the people or avenge their parents in some way. But Bastien's one of the point of views. The two others are females. They're best friends in the novel, Elisa and Sabine. Now, I know what you're thinking. One boy, two females, love triangle. Absolutely not. I have to stress that. I was so thrilled that there was absolutely no love triangle in this novel, because love triangles tend to be rather cliche. And they're found quite frequently. It's in young adult writing, it's, a classic trope that I've noticed, people are starting to step away from that trope. It's good, it's fine to see it every once in a while. Love triangles, they do inspire lots of drama and a lot of tension, but there are other ways to inspire drama and tension, and Purdie does that very well for her storytelling. So I really appreciated that there was no love triangle between these three characters. I was a little worried that there would be, but there's not. Elisa and Sabine, they're just best friends, and Bastien sort of tricks Elisa. But their dynamics, I thought they were all very good, and their voices are all very good. They're all very different characters, and I thought that was really interesting as well. They all have very different voices, very different strengths, very different personalities, but they all balance each other out quite wonderfully, and they balance out the scope of the novel as well. The reader doesn't get lost when it goes from one perspective to another, and instead the reader gets to enjoy the journey and the character development of these characters. There's also something that makes them all relatable as well. Sabine, she always sort of feels on the outskirts, like she doesn't quite fit in, because she doesn't fit in. She has a reluctance to do some of the tasks, and that would make her stronger within her group. She's part of this very strict religion. They're bone criers. What they do is they guide the souls of the departed to either, heaven or hell, basically. And to do that, you have to kill, animals, and take a bone to imbue your strength. But she has this reluctance to take life, which I think is very honorable on her part. But it does make her an outcast among her people, except for Elise. As for Elise, she's constantly struggling to get her mother's approval. Her mother sort of looks down her nose at her quite constantly, and I think it's always that dynamic of your mother is the queen, so she always expects so much of you, but nothing you do ever feels good enough, and you don't feel like you have your mother's love. And I thought that was very, very well developed, those dynamics, her narrative, how these two characters see each other throughout the novel as well. You get to see who they are and how others see them as well. And I thought that was a really good balance between those two to give more depth to their personality and more depth to their dynamics as well. And you really get to see their friendship blossom. As for Bastian, he is an orphan. He saw his parent taken from him, and it's left a hole in his heart. So he's very understandable as well. He's a very calculated character. He's very calculated, very thought-provoking, but as the novel grows, he becomes more charismatic. He does become more caring, and that hole that was inside of him, you get to see it fill. And I thought that was an empowering moment for his character development, because you're seeing him soften, all those rough edges, he still has them. But he's allowing himself to feel more composed and to feel more whole. He's allowing himself to open up. And I thought that was great. As for all three characters together, they all, like I said already, they all do balance each other out quite perfectly. And they do bring a lot of their own tension to the story, because they don't really understand each other. Like, Bastian doesn't really understand these girls and their religion and what they do until he really sees the outcome of not letting them do what needs to be done. And then you have the girls. They don't really understand the damage that they do with their religion. They don't understand what holes they leave behind in doing what they have to do. And I think that's also a nice balance, that they're both kind of questioning this religion and this mythology and the choices, even the tough ones that occasionally they do have to make. Like I said, the novel, it's very well paced. There's a long passage of time, but Purdie is able to condense it and make it more, to make it faster, basically. She captures the passage of time quite wonderfully with the phases of the moon. And I have to say this too as well with the book design, the phases of the moon changing on every single chapter. I thought that was very clever and very in tune with the message of the story. Everything's connected to the moon, and I'm a huge fan of the moon myself. So capturing the passage of time the way she does it, she doesn't make the story drag. I don't personally think that the story does drag. And it's unpredictable as well. There are so many twists and turns in the story that allow it to keep feeling fresh and allow it to keep being interesting. Like I said, it's unpredictable, and there are a lot of things that take the reader by surprise. And with all the complex emotions between the characters and the high stakes of the novel and the premise and the plot, I think this is definitely one of those books that I highly recommend. It's an incredible new start to a compelling new series. And I have to say this again, please go ahead and pick up a copy of this book, Bone Crier's Moon by Kathryn Purdie. Try to find it on the digital version of your local library. And if you're unable to, I try checking out Scribd. It's an app. It's $9.99 a month. If money is really tight, once again, I would say go back to your local library or order the book online if you've got the money. Please remember to support your local bookseller, Barnes & Noble, Better World Books, Book Depository, IndieBound. Please remember to support your local bookseller so that during this pandemic, bookstores are still going to be existing afterwards. I don't know about you, but I love a good bookstore. So once again, Bone Crier's Moon, Kathryn Purdie, give it 4 stars. Go ahead and check it out and have a great rest of your day.